Hey everybody, welcome back to the passenger seat. Today I'm driving from California to Oregon. So it's gonna be a very chill night drive, I hope. Oh my gosh. That was gonna be a really rough start. So, wait. Gosh, it is so hard to see. I'm driving with a controller and I just really struggle at times with all the mirrors because I feel like in real life I would be able to see more out of this truck because this little window is quite small and my truck is not that big. It's actually my very first truck. I feeling up right now. Yeah, and I played a bit of Euro Truck Simulator. Oh, that's it. That was really fast. Okay, perfect. Euro Truck Simulator was much slower when it comes to gas. But in Euro Truck Simulator, I was very keen to just do a bunch of quick jobs because I didn't want to think about truck maintenance and having a whole business, and everything felt kind of stressful. So I was just doing quick jobs. I made like 40,000 quick jobs, $40,000 from quick jobs. Oh my gosh, I'm being dangerous. Sorry, I don't know how to drive a truck. I don't know how to drive a truck. Nobody look at me. So yeah, I made like $40,000 from quick jobs, and I was like, "Ooh, a truck is $100,000, and maybe I can just buy out a truck with cash, just pour all my savings into it." Because it felt the idea of getting a loan felt kind of stressful. I think I talked about this in the last video too. I was like, I didn't want to have loans in real life and loans in video games. That's too stressful. But with American Truck Simulator, I decided to just go forward with how people normally play, perhaps. And I borrowed some money. I bought my first truck that you're seeing right here. Let's slow down and show y'all this beautiful little white truck. I know, like, with the keyboard, you can actually switch camera views, but on the controller I have to go cycle through all of them. Anyway, yeah, I have a big loan now, but it is actually pretty easy to make enough money to pay it off every month or whatever it is. So yeah, in a true YouTuber fashion, while I'm not a YouTuber by any stretch of the imagination, I recorded a whole 40-minute segment yesterday in American Truck Simulator and somehow lost the file. I think it just never saved, or I exited out too quickly before it was able to be processed. So yeah, here we are, second go. There's going to be so many things I talked about that may never get mentioned again because I could never remember what I talked about 24 hours ago. That is just asking too much of me. So yeah. I came across this really incredible essay yesterday, and it was talking a lot about hope and how we maintain hope in a world that feels extraordinarily inclined to keep it out of our vocabulary, our everyday vocabulary. And I've been struggling a lot with this too. As you may have noticed in my first video, I talked a lot about the tension between positive feelings and negative feelings, and hope and despair, and feeling like everything is a bit net neutral, because we are just living in a world where nothing is black and white, and for every positive thing there feels like there is some sort of negative tension holding it back too. And I used to be a big fan of Brene Brown. I haven't listened to her stuff or read anything in years now, just because there are far more thinkers to pay attention to. But I think she does talk a bit about how difficult it is to experience true joy, because there's always another shoe when we think about it. Like when we are in the moment of joy, often with the many anxieties that we have in the world, we're thinking about, we're experiencing it while also thinking, how long will this last? Or what's the catch? You know. So I found this essay very, very interesting. I believe the essayist is Dr. Aisha Khan, and she writes about how we maintain hope in solidarity movements, and in a very fraught political climate where many people feel like they are fighting for the right thing, and yet it feels like an impossible uphill climb to reach any sort of consensus and find unity in such a divisive world. And one of the key things I took away from it was that hopelessness is a privilege. In many parts of the world where there's a constant stream of violence, I think hope and hopelessness. Oh my gosh! I'm so sorry, yellow car. I almost missed my exit, and you were going way too fast. Sorry, I didn't mean to blame the victim there. That was entirely my fault. Anyway, yeah, hopelessness is kind of a privilege, because people who feel the most hopelessness are those who are often insulated from violence in a way. For people in the global south, and people whose existence is resistance, and whose everything they do is hope is needed to survive. Hopelessness looks very different in those situations. Oh my gosh, this is actually, I should turn off traffic violations again, because I'm so stressed by how slow everything is. There is no cars on the road, and people are turning at a snail's pace. Yeah, I find that a lot of people in North America in general are quite insulated from the rest of the world in many ways. Right now there are so many global tensions, and the opinions that come out of America, I think, often come out of a systematic penchant for ignorance, perhaps. It is kind of embedded in the education system, and the rest of our country, that there are just things we shouldn't know. I think I mentioned in the last video that certain types of activism are controversial in certain things aren't. It's easy to talk about Black Lives Matter on social media, and yet the reality is that critical race theory, which is, it's a theory and it is rooted in many things that are undeniable. And it's a framework that allows us to critically examine the way we talk about race. It's not supposed to be inherently political, but it is. And there was a whole fuss about talking about that in education system, right? And so the education system is really like the first line of propaganda, and the first line of what we decide as a society is important to talk about, and what isn't. And I think America is famously unable to point things out on a map. That's just a reputation that people have. And I don't think Canadians are much better in many ways, because I think we just are less loud about it, so we get less attention. But I feel like lots of people are able to say the things that they do about other countries and other political complexities, because they have this very, very simplified view of the world. Like, American imperialism works because in its own kingdom, people believe that we are the center of the world. And we don't see the ways that our actions actually harm other countries. There is a whole scare that the Republicans like to talk about regarding foreign workers. But the fact of the matter is that most industries would not be able to be sustained without temporary foreign workers. And at the same time, because there's this idea that people are very easily replaceable because other countries are poor, and kept poor for many reasons, that we are able to treat these foreign workers less. Agricultural workers are a big victim of all of this. There is a huge lack of stability that no North American would ever tolerate, and yet we blame the people who do this work for our failings. And it is an immensely complicated issue. And I was actually thinking about whether or not this is a platform that could talk about this, because I don't have dreams of monetization. This work, making little YouTube videos, would be far too stressful to upkeep. And at the time of this recording, I don't have a banner or a logo or anything, because that's just so beyond what I have capacity for right now. But I thought it would be a good place to keep a record of my thoughts and and to hopefully grow from my thinking. And at the same time, if people come across this, can I be as quote unquote controversial, or I don't know. I don't even think anything I'm saying is controversial. I am really giving the Disney version of a lot of like anarchist thinking. And I think anarchy gets thrown around as this really dangerous word by people, but I think at the same time, so many people agree that governments are not doing a good job. The number one thing people love to hate on is the government. So what do we do? What do we do? Yeah, I think we are very insulated in general. I was only recently able to learn about the kind of living conditions that migrant workers live in for the sake of our food and for the sake of sustaining like our communities. And yet many farms who employ them don't treat them well, and the government does not make sure that these farms, oh my gosh, speaking of farms, look at those little horses. Oh, so cute. Little Barbie horses. Yeah, the government's not interested in making sure that they're treated well for many reasons. And I remember, I forget what the source is, but I remember hearing or watching a video perhaps talking about how one of the most perhaps like controversial / difficult things that the American Constitution has done is the clause that says that all lives are equal. And I think this is something that Animal Farm has made fun of, right? All animals are equal, but some are more equal than others. And I feel like that is the world we're living in, where, oh my gosh, how many way stations are there? It's so annoying. At least it doesn't cost anything. Yeah, that equality clause has led to a lot of activism. It's the thing that allows a democratic society to protest. Not in perfect technical state. What does that mean? Whatever. I don't feel like my truck has sustained that much damage, though. I don't know this game. I got it like yesterday. Try my best here to just make it down the highway. I just want to get to the soothing parts, you know? Yeah, I was talking about democracy and how it was never meant to work. And I believe I talked about that in the last video as well. But yeah, that clause that all lives are equal has allowed people to protest, for better or worse. And yet, we truly do not live in a world where everyone is considered equal. As long as there is a hierarchy in any part of the system, there's just not going to be equality. And equality, as many people have been aware of, like, equality is not the same as equity, and equity is a whole different ball game. And that's like, there are days where I feel like the fight is so long and hard and impossible, but yeah, I think when it comes to hope, again, going back to hope, I feel the most hopeless when I am not with people. There is so much that people do that give me so much hope, and I think that's part of like the insularity of how we've been desensitized and hidden from real violence in the world. When you look at like who activists are in many different types of protests, it's fascinating that the more social justice oriented movements tend to be run by people of color, trans, queer, disabled people who suffer the violence of multiple intersections, not generations, of multiple intersections, who understand collective and generational violence. People who understand that people have been fighting for generations for equity. It's astounding what people have been able to accomplish, and it is truly a disservice to all of these freedom fighters if we were to be caught up in despair, especially while we are like in a warm home eating our chips and just looking at the news and feeling sad for ourselves and our non-existent children, so yeah, that article was very eye-opening for me, and I think it gave me a lot of hope, not to overuse the word, but yeah, I think there are just so many amazing thinkers out there, amazing Imagineers. No, I think Disney uses that word. People with imaginations. Yeah. There was an idea that was shared yesterday too, that utopias feel impossible. And at the same time, oh my gosh, bears. At the same time, utopia already exists for some people. People like the 1%. It is a utopia for some and not for others. Like, we are living in the dystopian version of the 1%'s utopia. And that was a mind-boggling revelation for me. I was like, yeah, the world feels so hopeless, but surely there are people who are able to sleep at night and who don't feel sick about the state of the world because they are reaping the benefits of it. And at the same time, I feel like everyone is kind of sick, even the 1%. I was reading an article about like the specific failings of the legal system in our country, and I have just been reflecting on why people would go out of their way to lobby against hate while getting away with it, and like being able and having the power to get the police and the government on their side. It's truly incredible how difficult it is to make the legal system work for the every man, the average person. And yet for certain populations, certain members of the population, it is as easy as a phone call to a friend. And that's not a system that works for anybody, and I think that really makes a joke out of their own profession as well. So, I actually didn't realize when I arrived. I think I'm in Oregon already, if I'm getting achievements for the Beaver State. I've been thinking a lot about the power of storytelling lately as well. The ability to paint worlds of belief is really quite fascinating. This came about because I was watching people play Blood on a Clocktower, of all things. And that game really exposes extremely interesting ways in which people believe or disbelieve and how information gets passed around. I feel like it is such a fascinating, like, microcosm of the world. I would never be able to play that game because it would drive me crazy. And I am a terrible liar, so unless I'm a village idiot who is sober, I don't want to be a part of that. But it is very fascinating to watch. And yeah, in that game, everybody has a role and everybody receives information in some way, but some are false and either given to them by the powers that be, or and some are false because they know the real information and they're trying to hide it. And so when you have like 10 people with varying degrees of real information, of inclination to share real information, it creates a very interesting society that we live in. And I was watching No Rolls Barred played this, and it's interesting like how often people will say, oh, there's a possible worldview that, or I believe in this world that whatever happens. And I think just that wording alone, it really encapsulates the way people are in our world too, in the real world. There are so many different types of worldviews going on, where certain people might believe that others are evil in some way, or they are incompetent in some way, or they are like not contributing to society in some way, or deliberately making a mess of society in some way. And all of these multiple worldviews exist at the same time. And for the people holding the worldview, that is their reality. And yeah, and how easy it is to sway people from one reality to another. In Blood on the Clocktower, it happens all the time where someone is holding real information and someone else will convince them that their information is false. And it's just, and then people are convinced that their alignment is not what they thought they were, and it's just all so beautifully complicated and delicious. Watching people try to unravel the multiple layers of this story, and you also hear people say, oh, like I just lost the thread on what's happening because there's so much confusion. And that's, I feel very strongly that is what is going on right now in North America. It's so strange to see systems at work here, where you can think, how is it possible that we are letting so much happen to people who don't deserve the kind of suffering that they have? Yeah, why do we let so much suffering happen in general? Why are people, stuck in a system where it's so easy to fall through the cracks? Why do we let cycles of violence continue through generations? There are so many of these questions because there are so many things that people feel like they should never happen. And yet, with the different worldviews and narratives, it is so easy to find someone to blame. It's so easy to come up with different hypotheses on why this class war we're fighting is so never ending. And I think too, if once we are on the same page, I say that as if it's an inevitability, but it's so hard to get anybody on the same page, even like two people. But I have hope that the more people come together to form communities and share information, that could create a good thing. But as I'm saying that, I'm also remembering that people come together to share false information and create horrible organizations that perpetuate a lot of these problems too. So I'm not sure. I just think perhaps if we were less insulated to the violence, things would be different. I once made a joke to a friend that a lot of men are terrifying to a lot of women. And that's not the joke. That's just the context leading up to the joke. A lot of people find men to be impossible. that they are just dangerous on so many levels and in so many ways, but and it is very difficult for people to see the ways in which men suffer in this world. And I remember when I was younger making the joke that perhaps men should go through the Hunger Games so that they could be aware of what real suffering could be like. Just so ungracious of me, thinking back on it now. But I think the concept of that thought is that we need to be a bit more open to what suffering looks like around the world, and not in the ways that we think, because I was just talking to a friend yesterday, I think, about the concept of like missionaries of going to Africa to build churches and build schools when they don't even know that Africa is a continent and not a country. Like I'm not talking about that kind of hubris. Because did folks have like little UNICEF boxes every Halloween because you're like raising money for children around the world who like don't have the privilege of trick-or-treating the way you do in North America? It's so goofy to think about now. Charity, it's always like charity to children in Africa, and in commercials there's always like the sad footage of like malnourished bodies and just romanticizing poverty, and also not painting an accurate picture of what any country in Africa really looks like. When the person was talking about building churches in Africa, I'm sure they did not envision the 2 million person megachurch in Nigeria that already exists. And truly, like, Christianity is not the vibe for a more equitable world. But that's my personal belief. So with these thoughts in mind, I want to pull it back to hope once more and just express my real deep gratitude for my friends in my community for reminding me that there is so much that is being done to try to create a better world, and like activism does not happen overnight, and like we are still standing on the shoulders of people like Marsha P. Johnson, and in the queer movements, because we haven't come as far as we'd like to believe. And at the same time, like, we are probably doing... Oh my gosh, this blue car is... Okay, thank you. I signaled. Okay, let me just try to make this turn. Yeah, we are standing on the shoulders of so many people before us, so we're just continuing the work. We're not... we can't build paradise overnight. We can't go back to any sort of, egalitarian utopia overnight. But I think the goal of every activist is to create a better world for the people before us. And I think there's a concept, and this may be an Indigenous concept, where we're always thinking about 7 generations before and 7 generations after. So yeah, it is a slow progress. But yeah, I am so grateful for the privilege of being able to be in community with wonderful people. And if if somehow you have found your way to my video and you feel like you are not in community, or it feels impossible to find community where you are, then I encourage you to look around and find different groups of people. If you have a marginalized identity, then find someone of similarly marginalized, but not necessarily the same identity of you, even. Yeah, I've been thinking a lot about this, and I have friends who are very passionate about different types of topics. For me, I will always be passionate about anti-racism, but for others, it might be about disability justice. It might be about gender. Yeah, legal rights for prisoners. They're all intersectional. Like, nothing exists in a vacuum. But at the same time, you can be passionate about one particular thing, because it is far too exhausting to be passionate about all the things. And so, yeah, like, connect with activists of all kinds and learn from each other, and I think eventually you'll find like-minded people. That's the hope. Yeah, when I met activists who are, oh my gosh, this is gonna be so repetitive. Activists who are actively participating in actions for change, I think a lot of that wisdom come from anti-racism movements, but it also comes from environmental justice movements. And here in Canada, environmental justice is 100% connected to Indigenous sovereignty movements, and yeah, you meet someone in any one of those movements, and you've met a lot of people who may be passionate about the same causes as you. And I think if we can be less siloed into the things that we believe, we will genuinely be a bit more connected. We would genuinely be more connected, just by taking in all these different points of view and all these different lived worlds that coexist in one tapestry of worldviews rather than singular worldviews for one group of people. Yeah, the more diverse your friend groups are, and the less tokenizing, the more safe they feel around you. I think that's really key to building community, like true community that would not punish you for being any sort of way. Yeah, I know that in big cities, it can be very easy to be lost, and in small towns, it can be very easy to disappear in other ways. So I hope everyone can experience the type of community I found in a small city, medium-sized town, in a place where I'm able to talk to folks and be genuinely myself. I think everybody deserves that kind of freedom. So, thank you very much for joining me. This has been a lovely little chat. I've arrived in Oregon, and I will go off now to Montana. Wow. I've not been to Montana in many, many years, so I think it's gonna be a very lovely drive, and we'll chat next time.